no shoes. He appeared to be very nervous as he walked through the large wooden church doors. He lowered his head and his eyes looked directly at the floor as he walked slowly towards the far back pew away from the rest of the congregation. The preacher immediately ceased talking and slowly lowered his arms, which he had been flinging about during the course of the sermon. His eyes shifted toward the young man who accidentally slid the heavy wooden church bench while trying to sit down. The deacons and the choir master began to whisper among themselves as several of the other church members turned around to look at the somewhat unshaven figure. I noticed that when he walked into the church, he was smiling, but he was very thin and a bit dirty, and he was not wearing any shoes. And he looked awfully hungry to me. He constantly smiled at us children from the orphanage when we'd turn around to look at him. The matron reached over and she slapped me on the leg because I dropped the nickel onto the wooden bench. It was the coin that the orphanage had given me to put in the collection plate, so I didn't turn around and look at him anymore. I always liked the money collection part of the church service the best because I knew it was almost over and we'd get to go home soon. The preacher talked on and on about how some people should dress up for church and how they should cut their hair and be clean-shaven before coming to services. I knew he was talking about the man in the back of the church, but the man just sat there. He smiled and never said a word. As the sermon progressed, all at once he raised his hands toward the ceiling and loudly said, "Praise the Father in heaven." The older church people turned around and looked at him like he was crazy or something, but he sure didn't look crazy to me. The preacher finally walked off the platform and he whispered something into the deacon's ear. The deacon got up from his chair and he walked down the side aisle next to the colored glass windows, and he asked the man to leave because he was disrupting the church service. The young man looked up at the deacon and smiled. Without saying a word, he rose to his feet, turned, and walked toward the back doors leading out of the church. As he reached the doors, he once again stopped, turned around, and smiled at everyone. He reached over, picked up the entire stack of the upper room pamphlets that sat on the table by the entrance. Then he turned them face down, smiled, and he walked out of the large wooden church doors. I will never forget the kindness I saw in that man's smile. A man with a very kind face who was asked to leave the church that Sunday morning because of the way he appeared to be dressed. I don't think I ever saw him in church again after that. However, he sure looked a lot like me. To be that man who was in the shiny pictures in the middle of my Bible.